In this video, we're going to continue our exploration of the Pose tool in 3D Coat's Sculpt workspace. This time, we're going to look at using a few more advanced options such as the Paint Select and Freeform Lattice Deformation. Before I go any further, I just want to mention something that's very important when preparing to use the Pose tool. If you're working on a character, then you probably want to decimate or reduce the poly count of your model for the sake of performance. If you do not see the proxy slider in your UI, you can access it from the Windows menu under Pop-ups, Proxy Slider. In this instance, I'm on Reduce. I'll go to the Geometry menu just to elaborate a little bit further. Under the Proxy method, you can normally choose reduction of 2 levels, 4 levels, 8 levels, or decimation with these levels as well. Decimate is going to reduce the poly count, but it will also add additional polys where it needs to in order to preserve crisp edges or details. So you get better visual fidelity, but at the cost of it taking a little bit longer to calculate. Reduction switches to proxy mode considerably faster, but the resolution is uniformly downgraded, which is fine for things like posing on a character, however, not so ideal for hard surface modeling, especially when extruding elaborate brush alphas or shapes. I can click here to choose either reduction or decimation. And you can see with decimate, I get these different levels, and I can scrub and see just below that an estimated poly count. So these are like stepping down different subdivision levels in other applications. I'm going to decimate just 2 levels, and that's it. And now I can click the Cache Disk icon either here or here on the layer. So let's go ahead and click this. As you can see, it's taking longer to calculate. Okay, and I drop down from about 9 million to 4.5 million. Let's select this other layer. And I'll also go into proxy mode with this as well. But this time I'm going to choose reduction, and I'm going to step up to 4 levels. When I click the Cache to Disk icon, we'll see it's much more crude than decimation. With decimation, it actually applied more polygons along the edges. If we zoom in and look at wireframe, I can see that. Okay, so I can see here that it is indeed cached. We can see the visual difference here. This base model is using decimation, and this one is using reduction. When I zoom in and turn wireframe on, it's a little bit difficult to see. Let me try a different shader. Yeah. Now this one, I'll choose something a different color. Let's make that one bright blue as well. And you can see what it did here along the edges. It detected the edges and applied quite a few more polygons than here along the flat surfaces. Okay, so I'll hide that. And with the reduction, it's a lot like working with voxels. So you have this uniform level polygonal distribution. And I didn't really want to go that far into talking about proxy mode, but it is critical to know if you're working with a Pose tool, because you're working with deformations of very high polygon counts. So the performance penalty can be quite substantial if you're trying to deform a really dense model. With that done, let's go back to unhiding this object. And I'm going to try to go back to my regular shaders here. Let's see. And I'll turn wireframe off. I can right click and choose apply to visible, so it applies it to everything here. The first thing I want to do is I want to create a little bit of indentation in the base here. So let's go to an orthographic view by clicking the cube icon or the 5 key on your number pad. And then I'll go to a top view here. From now on, I'll use my hotkeys. Okay, so I want to see through this rail. I can do that by ghosting it. And I just want to quickly mention ghosting can be changed here in this drop list menu at the top of the UI. You can choose how 3D Coat responds to ghosted volumes here. I want to make sure I'm on the right layer that I actually want to deform. But if I wanted to deform both, I can choose through all volumes. In this case, I won't do that. Also, if you happen to have a low polygon version that you want to move along with a high poly version, you would import that low polygon version here in the Retopo workspace from the import tool here or the Retopo menu. And you want to bring that low polygon version in here. And then when you make large scale changes with the Pose tool, the Move tool, or the Transform tool, you have an option to conform the low polygon retypo mesh. So whatever deformation changes I make, it's also going to apply it in those areas to the retypo mesh. And I'll see a copy of it here in the viewport as well. So I want to mention that while I'm at it. It's especially helpful whenever you're working on a character. For example, if you're trying to change the proportions, you would probably want to make sure that your low polygon retypo mesh also moves along with it. Again, I want to make sure I'm on the right layer here, or right Vox tree layer. And I'll go ahead and go to the pose tool in the E-panel. In this case, I want to choose the rectangular lasso, but I could choose any one of these. If I want to make sure I select all the way through a model, I want to make sure ignore back faces is unchecked. But if I only want to select the camera facing vertices or polygons, then I would check this. I'll hit the E key to bring the E-panel to me so I don't have to reach across the UI again. If you want to change the edit pose fall off, you would want to do that ahead of time. For example, if I wanted to create some type of a special shape as it's being extruded, I can perhaps make that a hard edge. I can create one here by right-clicking and changing the point type. And hit OK. I'll go ahead and clear this selection and make sure I'm in Paint Select. So I'm going to go to a side view, hold down the Shift key, move it up. Okay. Now I'm going to scale it up, and you can see how instead of a smooth transition, how 3D Coat has actually applied these hard edges to my extrusion. The selected area looks rough because decimation in general creates a coarse and uneven pattern of topology and therefore is not ideal for hard surface modeling. Okay, so I'll go ahead and push that down instead of extruding it upward. And I can then maybe expand it and contract it. All right, and if I'm happy with that, you can always smooth the selection as well. But let's go ahead and clear the selection. We could save it and reload it later, but I need to mention whenever you save a selection, it will be voided if your model is changed. So while I'm in a cache state, this really isn't going to help much. If I stay in a cache state for some time, then I can come back to that saved state by choosing load selection. But again, if the vertex order is changed, which it will be when you uncache, then that save state will be voided. So just keep that in mind. It's very helpful if you are working in a non-cached state or mode, and if you don't apply any live clay or any kind of dynamic tessellation or reduction to your model. It's pretty hard to do in 3D Coat in the scope workspace because you're working with triangles, dynamic tessellation, and voxels, which changes the topology on an almost consistent basis. That's why subdivision levels just really isn't very practical or possible on these types of meshes. Again, they're just different creatures. So with that said, let's clear the selection. There are a couple different ways that I can smooth this out. I could smooth the entire model by clicking Smooth All. In Surface Mode, I'll get this option here. Keep sharp edges that appear as a result of Boolean operations. So let's turn this degree up quite a bit and hit OK. So that smoothed our mesh out quite a bit. Let's go ahead and come out of a cached state. And I'll come out of orthographic view. Okay. So I can smooth again if I want, but this is where I would want to show the difference between the proxy mode when you're working with hard surface objects and when you're not working with proxy mode. Let's go back to the adjust section, pose tool, and paint select, rectangular. Go back to an orthographic view, a top view. Okay, main axis. I'll go to the side view again. Hold the shift key to move just the gizmo. Look at edit post fall off. Okay. Let me undo to go back to this flat state here, and I'm going to smooth the selection a bit. Hold the shift key again to move this up. And I'll clear the selection. So you can see it's a lot cleaner. When you're in surface mode, we do have a tool that will help sharpen these edges here. Let's go to the brushes section. It's called the angulator, and one new change is that it will detect hard edges according to a specific degree, and we have a video that covers that in some detail. Okay, so I want to go ahead and modify the base here again. This rail, I'm going to ghost that. We're already in orthographic view, so I'll go to top view and collapse the live clay tools and go down to the adjust section here. Still in the post tool. Set my edit post fall off. I'll just go back to default and kind of tighten up this S curve just a bit, not much. Okay. And I'll make my selection again. Okay. Hit the 5 key to come out of orthographic view. And I'll just push this down. Scale it in just a bit. Maybe not too much. Or, actually, let's push it to the front just a bit. Okay, so I think we're happy there. I'll clear that selection and unghost this rail layer. Let's go ahead and stop the video right here, and we will pick up in the next one. So see you then.